Alright, everyone, this is it. We've reached what is, for now, the end. Magical Girl Rising Project Red. This is the conclusion to Snow White's story. It's also the conclusion to the Black, White, Red trilogy. It's a conclusion to a lot of things, but it leaves a lot of things open as well. We'll get into that. I'm here once again to, perhaps for the very last time, uh, go ahead and rank everyone and just give my final thoughts on the series as a whole. As per usual, I'm just going to be referencing the character profiles that they give at the beginning of the book and just kind of go scatterbrained all over for everything everywhere. So, let's start with Thunder General Adelheid. Okay, my girl definitely deserves her S tier placement rather. Uh, she mostly fought Princess Lightning, and we'll get to Princess Lightning in a bit, but over and over and over and over, just continuous fighting of Princess Lightning. It was just kind of like a bow to her character. You know, she did unfortunately kick the bucket, which I'm not too happy about. But it kind of suits the character and the fight and the situation that she was in. Um, you know, Again, I just thoroughly enjoyed the way she fought, her attitude, her costume, her ability, and the fact that she kept the original Lightning with her um, through to the end and actually channeled her life energy into the original Princess Lightning to I guess somewhat revive her was quite admirable. So I salute to you, Thunder General Adelheid. Your presence was a bit diminished in this book, but you had a fairly big presence in the other two, so I can't really complain about that. You had a somber ending, a respectful ending, one that definitely deserves a salute. So good job with that character. I genuinely did enjoy Adelheid a whole bunch. Speaking of Princess Lightning, though, she is quite crazy. Not in terms of she herself, but rather her presence in the book. So Old Blue, being the person that she is, decided to use Princess Lightning as her trump card and combined her with Shufflin technology, which means Princess Lightning is, I guess, essentially Shufflin 3. With, I believe, a Joker. Now, I don't know who the Joker is, but there was a J. It could have been a Jack, I guess. But yeah, a billion, just a whole bunch of Princess Lightnings are just raiding the middle school, and they're quite the primary force of conflict for a lot of characters at a lot of points in the story, as well as Frederica's mercenaries and all that. But yeah, she herself didn't really do much as like the Princess Lightning we know. She didn't do much, and she seemed mostly unfazed in the epilogue. For all we know, that could just be her quirks. That kind of like aloof nature that she had, and just her gluttony, and Princess Lightning being Princess Lightning. It's hard to describe, but you know what I mean if you know Princess Lightning, the original. Um, she was more just a force to be reckoned with in this book, so she's not really going to change the placement. I do enjoy her a bunch, and again, her design and just abilities are really cool. But the use of lightning in this book is very minimal, so I don't feel the need to change her. But again, I thoroughly did enjoy her character. Now, kind of bouncing off of Princess Lightning, let's get to Shuke Prince and Sally Raven. Unfortunately, my girl Shuke Prince did in fact die. Cutie Healer Water Spray Gun, the dream is truly and utterly and just utmost dead. Just like Shuke Prince, which, that's always fun. We did find out that Halna Medi Melon did snatch Shuke Prince as well. She was the fifth and last of the homunculi that she was able to create. So that blast that Sally Raven saw Shuke Prince get caught up in would have killed her if she wasn't a homunculi, but she was bleeding from her eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and just went to the courtyard to fight some more. Um, and that's that. And unfortunately, she died by getting her neck snapped or twisted by Old Blue. Uh, Old Blue, I do love you a bunch, but you didn't have to do my girl like that. I guess you didn't really care about her. Uh, in contrast to like Rani and Diko, but dang, rough stuff. Rough stuff. Gonna skip over to Sally Raven for just a bit. Diko, we again didn't really get much of her. Diko was more so, um, just another force to be reckoned with. And Old Blue put her to rest, so that's another Lazaline candidate down. And again, that was pretty much it. Sally Raven, bouncing back to her, she she was pretty neat in the sense that she met my girl Dark Cutie, which I always love interactions with like unexpected magical girls just meeting each other. But it makes sense that Dark Cutie was even involved in this, and I'll get to that in a second. But we see Sally Raven struggling with the fact that her friend Shuke Prange is dead and dying, or dying and dead. We see her just use her crows to the best of her ability, and her crow like loses a wing and a beak, and oh my goodness. But we just see more of that like grittiness with Sally Raven, more of her ability when it comes to fighting. Why she's being considered as a cutie healer, so I think that's pretty neat. And of course, her interaction with Dark Cutie is perfect, because you have Dark Cutie, who is Dark Cutie in the flesh, and then Sally Raven, who's fighting against all these mercenaries with cutie healer masks, all these fake cutie healers, and then the actual Dark Cutie comes in and swoops in and helps her. Something like that is just a really cool setup for an interaction. And you have the same thing that Dark Cutie always does, muttering to herself, acting a little creepy, but always focus on that hero-villain mindset and what it means to be a hero and what it means to be a villain, and that a cutie healer wouldn't cry at a time like this. And it was just a really good scene, and it just makes me like Dark Cutie even more. Just Dark Cuties to go. Sally Raven kind of picks up her own broken confidence near the end of the book. Considering who she is as a person, as a magical girl, as a cutie healer, everything like that. It's just cool to see that kind of inner conflict with Sally Raven. And now I didn't mention, I might have. Well, point is, she teams up with Princess Lightning at the end of the book, and they're actually going to try and star in their own original Magical Girl anime as the protagonist, Magical Daisy style. So if, there is a future side story perhaps where we see that come to fruition, I think that would be really cool to see. And I just enjoy the concept of that even happening. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Looking here on this sheet, we have Miss Rill. Miss Rill, where are you? I think you're in B. Yeah. You actually did a bit more this time. Question is it enough to boost you higher? Unfortunately, I don't think it is. I think I like these characters just a bit more. But that doesn't mean there's not value in what Miss Rill did, because, again, another unexpected pairing, but they always love Asari Endo always knows how to connect magical girls in the greatest ways. Miss Rill teamed up with Love Lulu, Miss Rill being someone who can take on the properties of gemstones, and then Love Lulu having those gemstones. It was perfect. So I forget exactly what the stone was, but it was a stone that healed, and a stone that provided like safe passage and a lucky encounter. All those stones, Miss Rill turned into them, which allowed Love Lulu to enhance her magic a whole bunch. And that's awesome. That is awesome. And it was just a really fun combination. We got to see a little bit of that. In terms of what Miss Rill did afterwards, I believe she's still with Ragi, because he was the one who was recommended by my boy Ragi. So she's with him in Magical Girl Management and is doing her own thing. I think everyone in Magical Girl Management now has their own room. That's including Pastel Mary as Francisca, and associated parties. But yeah, that was just really neat to see that combo. In terms of Love Lulu, there was this really, really good scene where she kind of confronted Ripple because Ripple had seen or had found out that Frederica killed her confidence because Ripple fought her in her incarnation form as Kashiki Kurokushi Hime. I believe that's what the name is. Let me look here. Goodness. Kashiki Akaru Kushihime, yes. So, and then Ripple had kind of lost confidence because Frederica's putting into her mind that Snow White needed you, now that you needed to do things for her, and perhaps there was a bit of truth of that, but it kind of made Ripple lose her characteristic, edge and just, determination to kill. But yeah, just Love Lulu getting Ripple back into focus was really great. Honestly, I might have said this last time. It's been quite a while since I recorded the White video, but I didn't expect to really like Love Lulu as much as I did. But I'm glad that I do because it's just Ripple needed another connection. I think that was a positive one, and Love Lulu acting as that was really nice to see. In terms of what Love Lulu is doing now. Unfortunately, Old Blue does pass away during the events of Red. Perhaps fortunately for some others. Something tells me she's probably quite the divisive character. But anyway. Love Lulu is somewhat framed for her death by the remaining Lazaline candidates and followers, just because she was there around the area where she died, and she did witness her dead body. So, she's kind of on the run, doing mercenary work as a magical girl, and she's not much of a fighter, she's a supporter, so she's kind of just struggling. My girl is going through it. She can never catch a break, whether it's with antagonistic partners or just dealing with various circumstances. But you know what? She survived, and she's doing her own thing, and I like that for her. So, you got this, Love Lulu. Keep going strong. It was good to see you again. Let's see, who else do we have here? Classical Lillian, I'm going to skip over because I'm going to wait to talk about her with Kumi Kumi. Kalkoro was neat because she found out, she'll go above Deco here just because she got a little more, just in this volume. But, we've always seen her struggling and her lack of motivation when it comes to the Magical Girl class and when it comes to appeasing the principal and all that. But she gets, she still has her own sense of value, her values. She wants to protect the students, and when she sees that, Halna is doing her nonsense, she shows visible anger and stands up against her, and it's because of that anger that she actually just becomes more of her own character rather than just someone just cowering under her the shadow of her situation, which I think is pretty neat. So yeah, good to see some Kalkoro. Alright, so after Kalkoro, let's see, I'm actually gonna hop over to the alternate page here. Let's talk about Arlie. Arlie, what did you do this volume? Huh? Not much. She didn't do much. She was paired with Dory, which is, a fun combination. We got more of Dory's perspective. Dory is as self-centered as the brief, perspective we got before. She does not like Arlie. She shrieks to herself when she realizes she's growing somewhat protective of Arlie. She's got the high and mighty, air about her. But she and Arlie did provide some assistance when it came to Frederica, so that was pretty neat. I do really like Dory because now she has a connection with Mephistopheles, um, and Mephis having lost the person she bonded with throughout the events of Black and White. She lost them in Red. Uh, Now Dory is taking in that place of someone who is interested in manga, and Mephis is going to be sharing with her. That's what's happening in the epilogue, and I think that's really neat. Before we focus on Mephisto, quick sidetrack to a couple of characters here. Blade Brenda and Ken and Catherine are dead. That sucks. Damn. But yeah, Arlie, your sisters are dead. They were in fact killed in that last Frederica fight in White, and that just sucks to see. We know this because Arlie in the epilogue is carrying Catherine's cannon and Brenda's blade. That does mean that Arlie now has more means to fight, and be a cooler character on her own rather than this acting solely for defense. But man, that is depressing. I wanted to see more of them interacting. They assisted Deluge and everything like that. But yeah, in terms of Deluge, she did practically nothing. But we'll get to why she did nothing. Same thing with Bluebell. Bluebell fought as Mona, and they both nearly died. But the news of Ripple saying that Frederica was a fake disbanded the fight. I will say though, it was really neat to see more of Bluebell's fighting. And as Mona, she'd probably be like above Jube, just because I don't know much about her, but she has a neat ability. Or maybe she's like Flamey level. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on Asmona. If we get art of her later on, then yeah. Speaking of, characters, these two, I have found out they are in free-to-play F2P. This is Amy and this is Monaco. We have seen them interacting, I believe, with Marika Fukuroe. They also are somewhat related to Frederica's operations. When it comes to, what I have, rather, when it comes to any opinion I have on them, I don't have an opinion. Their designs are really pretty, but they didn't really leave a good impression the times we saw them. They were kind of obnoxious and loud. I'm gonna put Monaco above Amy just because I like her design a little better. Yeah, maybe if I read free to play F2P, I can go ahead and rank these as well as everyone else. But from my understanding, it's on eternal hiatus and possible reboot status. So yeah, this is why Stella Lulu remains up there. Also, these are, I believe, from Unripe Duet, which is Cranberry's Origin, which is an untranslated drama CD. Very fun. And there's also Double Shadow, which is involving Shadow Gale and Piffle, also untranslated. So I don't really have access to those, which is a bit unfortunate, because I really want to know what these characters are involved in, and anything with my favorite character ever and her companion would be quite fun. Anyway, back on track. Yes, goodness, I got off track for some reason because Monaco and Amy and Asmona. Yes, that's what brought me here, because I was talking about Bluebell, because I was talking about Dory. Yes, so Dory's not really going to change. She served her purpose pretty well, as did Arlie. Dang for Arlie. I'm glad Dory's got a new connection, though. And rest in peace to the other two sisters. Deluge is going to be interesting to me, just because she's... I guess I'll talk about the end of the book at the end, but yeah, Deluge is pretty interesting to me here. The other person on this page is Rani, who has already expired. We know my thoughts on her. Yeah, she was a pretty great character as well. Alright, bouncing back, I guess we can talk about, the finale group now. Classical Lillian, let's see, you're somewhere around here, yes. Well, you're more relevant than Palette, but I kind of can't Do I like? No. Yeah. Hmm. Actually, were you above Jordan Mouse? Well, you know what? You'll be there now. Yeah. Classical Lilium, she was basically just controlled the whole story, and now it's time to explain about the ruins. So we know that Halna made the courtyard into like her own magic forest. She actually used the power of the ruins to enhance her magic, and these ruins were created by an accident when it came to the first mage. It's what killed the first mage and left the three sages. So these ruins rather, control the incarnation system, which produced the three sages. So the next incarnations of Grimheart and Ratsumukana Honame no Kami and Puck Puck, all of them are going to be, or rather, they were controlled. They're the souls of the original sages that's influenced by their new bodies, right? And the ruins, the relic in the ruins controlled that. Um, so that is what is kind of like going on with this whole thing. Classical Lillian gets absorbed into the ruins, and I'll explain how that happens in just a bit. But she gets absorbed into the ruins, and she does like the remaining will of her assist, Snow White, Mephis, and Teddy Goodgrip when they do go into the ruins. But besides that, we don't get much of her deliberation between how she feels as a human and how she feels as a magical girl. That was all in like the previous book, so she just kind of got cut off. I mean, you know what? That's how this series works. Sometimes a character, their life just gets cut off, and that's what happened to Lillian. So you did your best, girl. Also, I'm noticing, backtracking a bit, I didn't talk about Rappy Tape. I don't think I did. Rappy Tape was neat. She helped Snow White, and she survived, and she's doing more jobs under Jube and Papetta. Yep. Actually, speaking of Jube, we found out her ability. If she writes something with a pen in 24 hours, it will tell her if that statement is true or false, depending on the color of the ink. So we see in motion about once or twice, and yeah, just a little more info on her. Yeah. Anyway, back to the finale group here. Kumi Kumi, where are you, girl? You're gonna go under Adelheid. I thoroughly enjoyed you. Oh, but like, putting you above Pechka? I guess that bumps up Pechka by default. See, tier lists are always so hard when you have a bunch of characters from everywhere, right? Because like my immediate choice was like, man, Kumi Kumi. Yeah, I don't know. I just really liked your conclusion there, but do I like you more than everyone else here? Ooh, and I actually like you more than Adelheid. Maybe, I don't know. Man. We'll go with my gut. I'm gonna say you go here. So, yes, Kumi Kumi. So the ruins, when you walk in, are all green. It's moss on the ground, moss on the walls, moss on the ceiling. Everything is moss, green moss. And I believe at the end of White, Asari Endo joked that the name of red would be Viridian Green. Yeah, Viridian Green makes sense now because it's the ruins, and there's just this pulsating. It's a pulsating organism of this like echoing wills of all who have entered and perished within, and it's just like a hive mind within the moss of just come to us and leading the magical girls off the path and just absorbing everything, probably to power the seed that performs the reincarnations and just all that nonsense. So it is just this real trippy and like scary, honestly, it's scarily described place. If ever, somehow, we reach red in animation in about 75 years from now, and we see that animated fully, I thoroughly look forward to how they're going to portray that in animation. Looking at Kumi Kumi's background here, whoever, the Magical Girl Racing Project wiki, I believe, made these profile pictures, they got a sick sense of humor putting that bright green behind Kumi Kumi. Because, gee, what happened to Kumi Kumi? She also got absorbed. Lillian, was mindless and got absorbed because of Holland's order, because again, they're both homunculi. But Kumi Kumi, she was probably the homunculi that I feel like had most of herself, just, how should I say, most of herself, her mental self present while she was a homunculi, even while following orders. And she ends up getting absorbed trying to save Lillian, but her remaining will, we just get this like really really well written part where it's just like her sentences of thought, like the way the sentences are written are very choppy and almost like commands, where she's just trying to force her will through to help the three magical girls who are trying to stop Frederica, and doing this and that. And I think it's really awesome. She even left them the remains of her dragon that she built with Lillian. So I think it's also really cool that she's a wind up, right? Almost robotic in the way of how she looks in her magical girl form, because she was someone who followed orders and stuck to the rules and just was quiet about everything, but her will was so powerful that it persisted through the mosh, through the Viridian Green, and just assisted Snow White and Mephistopheles and Teddy Goodgrip all the way to the end. So there was that little bit of a take this, to Frederica. Probably because Frederica invaded her house and, they did this and that with her. But I don't know, just I have respect for Kumi Kumi. I already liked her design a whole bunch. I was just waiting for that little push to push her up to S, and how they wrote her assimilating into the Viridian Green, I think, was really great. I am devastated that she is, gone. I thoroughly enjoyed her in every part. But for a finale for her, I think it was done really well. And I also think that it parallels when Kana saved her from that, from what happened in Black, right? Didn't she almost get absorbed in Black too? Foreshadowing is a literary device, yada yada, right? But yes, thoroughly enjoyed Kumi Kumi, even though, again, I am purely devastated on what happened to her. Alright, Teddy Goodgrip and Mephistopheles. Now, I think it's worth putting these two together just because they're, the last of the homunculi. They had their childhood friend drama, The most we get of Teddy here is just her, despair of realizing that she was ripping up people with her mittens under the control of the principal. And then we get a really good piece of art where Mephis is, hyping her back up to do what they need to do. And it's really cool because it mimics them when they were in, I think it was kindergarten or elementary school, holding hands, walking home, but it's walking into what is most certain doom. And I don't know, that kind of parallel was just really great. I think I'll put Teddy over Lightning, just as a little cherry on top. Mephis is going to stay where she is. I thoroughly enjoyed Mephis. She ended up surviving. She's at the lab with Dory. That does not give me high hopes for her future. If Navi-Roo did what he did because of what's happening at the lab right now, then Mephistopheles might become an ingredient for something akin to an incarnation, or might be used to power up Navi-Roo's sister. I don't know, but her head is dented right now. She's in the hospital, or my bad, the lab, which is basically like the Osk faction hospital and research facility, and she's reading manga with Dory. So, she ponders over the loss of Kana. Kana was the one who passed away. That was her friend. Um, and just seeing all that go down with her was yeah, it was thoroughly enjoyable. Just because it was somewhat of a conclusion to her character arc, but there's like kind of like a part two that can happen with Dory. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed Memphis Fellas as well. Let's talk about the big wigs. Except before we do that, I just want to talk about Mana and Uluru. Yes, hi. I did a bait and switch. Mana, her whole thing was trying to get inside the school barrier. Also, she appeared in the epilogue when it came to Tapsekame and Nanako-san. So, she's alive and well. So, there's that. In terms of Tapsekame, she was Snow White's armor, and she did fight a bit. She actually lost half of her size because of Frederica. Frederica destroyed half of her, and now she's Mini-May. So she's alive, but she hasn't spoken really, and she's just kind of floating as a little spirit of wind. I'm glad my girl didn't die, but goodness, that was quite the scare. Next up, in the Mana group, we have Nanako-san. Now, I'm gonna get to Nanako-san in a bit, but just know that her existence continues to be very funny. Yes. Let's talk about Kana. Kana, my girl, I just loved. I loved, because when someone regains their memories, there's always the question of how they're gonna be written moving forward, right? Are they going to be a completely different person? Are they going to be the same person? Or is it going to be like a fusion of both? And even when you do a fusion of both, that's a tough tightrope to walk. But they did it really well here. So she has her memories of Ratsumu Kana, Honome no Kami, and as Kana. And it's just a really perfect fusion because she cares, right? Kana, the Kana side of her, cares about all the students in the middle school and is thoroughly worried about every student that she has met and just attended classes with. But then the Ratsumu side of her is concerned about her place in the magical kingdom. Because she can ask any question and get the answer, and we find out that it can even be a mental question. Because of that, she knows basically everything. If she asks questions, she knows who's alive and who's dead, but she's scared to ask. She only really finds out with Thunder General Adelheid just because she was directly involved in protecting her. But yeah, she's scared to ask about Mephis, her close friend. Ratsumu Kana, Honome no Kami in general, as an incarnation, is a very reserved and scared individual. She, to put it lightly, she knows the true reason on what the problem is with the magical kingdom and its magic depleting. It's the incarnation system, which again involves the ruins and the seed. So Puck Puck, Grimheart, her, and every version of their incarnation, every time a new one is born and made, they suck a bunch of power out from the magical kingdom. So she's asking questions. How can I solve this? What can I do? How can I kill myself in a way where it helps the magical kingdom? She's that self-sacrificing. And she's not a fighter. Sure, she has fighting ability, but even compared to the fake incarnation that is Frederica, she basically loses. So throughout this entire book, it's just constant dilemmas and just pure willpower of Kana trying to protect the people she knows, but also trying to do what's right for the magical kingdom, and she ultimately sacrifices herself in the final battle with Frederica. But yeah, man, it was just rough, and she has a personal connection to Frederica. She when she was still, as herself, Ratsumukana, Frederica became her attendant through some means or other. Ratsumu, being very lonely, knowing the truth of her existence and the fate of the magical kingdom, eventually confided in Frederica, which gave Frederica the idea to conduct her whole plan with Snow White and this incarnation that she became and everything. So Kana holds herself responsible for Frederica, and that's why she's so gung-ho and just blazing passion, everything she can do to just stop her is the priority. So, yeah, I mean, wonderful, wonderful character. There's a lot of inner conflict with both the two sides of herself and just her past and her ability and how it shaped who she was as a person. Wonderful incarnation, honestly. Yeah, truly. I'm almost putting her at SS, but I'll refrain. Actually, Federica, I know I put you at SS like preemptively. I'm actually gonna move you down here. I'm gonna put you up here, maybe above Swim and May. Yeah, I just really, really like Kana. So, yeah, okay. So, Old Blue, my girl, Old Blue. Wow. Okay. We find out the reason why she wants to get rid of all magical girls. It's very briefly touched upon. But who else but Cranberry haunting the narrative again? Yeah. Cranberry killed her granddaughter. We don't know who her granddaughter was, what her granddaughter was like. Is it one of these people? Maybe her. That's the only one I could think of. They have vaguely similar vibes. But anyway. Yes. Old Blue, her granddaughter, was killed by Cranberry. She wants to remove the magical girl system altogether. We see just a lot more of Old Blue's thought process. We are constantly reminded of her ability to see the truth of all things, or the true nature of all things, The highlight for me with her was her fight against Frederica, because Old Blue, seeing the true nature of all things, immediately understands Frederica's new form, immediately understands her new ability and everything that she's trying to do. So she's like parallel processing 6 different things. Everything about Frederica, all the attacks, ways to attack her back, and then is using very minute and intricate and highly hyper-detailed hand signals to command an army of shuffling-based Princess Lightnings to strategically Princess Explosion Frederica in ways that will get Old Blue to damage her. What? That's crazy. Like, man, I love the way abilities are written in this series. Old Blue, with her strange martial arts, and just her hand signals and pure just drive to do what she wants, is, again, ultimately very entertaining. And she's probably the most elegant magical girl there is. I said it last time, a bit with a grievance, but I'll just admit it. Old Blue is really pretty. Like, her design is really pretty, and it's important that her design is really pretty. It's flowy, it's majestic. There's just like the right amount of like flowers and frills where it's not like overbearing. She has a prestige and beauty about her that is seen in the way she fights, and the way she thinks, and the way she uses her ability, and just the way she carries herself, even in the way she thinks. Snow White, reading her thoughts, it's as calm as a still lake. I believe it was described, something like that. It's just awesome. to see like a character like Old Blue. And you know, it's someone we've known about for a while, and we've been getting bits and pieces and more bits and pieces, and this seeing her really come to fruition these last two books was thoroughly enjoyable. Frederica does end up defeating and killing her. I think she even has a peaceful face in death, but she was in fact an old woman, you know, because again her granddaughter. But yeah, I honestly thought it was gonna be Bluebell versus Old Blue, but perhaps I just simply misread their dynamic. But yeah, man, Old Blue is a real fun character. I'm gonna put you over Bluebell, I think. I just really enjoy the character that she is, her ability, and just her design. Honestly, it might be like a top 5 design for me in the series. It's just so good. All right, next up we have okay. Before I get to Frederica, Ripple, and Snow White, is there anyone I'm missing about? Or I'm missing. Well, I know I'm going to talk about the Luge later. Oh, Mariko Fukuroi was mentioned a grand total of 1 time. Yeah. She exists. She wasn't really relevant, but, you know, she's still my girl. Go do your own wild plant thing, girl. Oh, and actually, note about Dark Cutie. You might be wondering, how was she able to contact and be with Sally Raven if the school was under a barrier? Well, duh. It's been said she's been stalking Snow White because, you know, she's a creep like that. And I think it's so funny that she just kind of ended up getting trapped in the situation because she just really likes Snow White and follows her everywhere. Okay, so last one before the big ones, I guess we'll go back to Nanako-san. So, Nanako-san has been a tree for what is probably a few months now. Since the end of Breakdown, she was a tree all throughout black, all throughout white, all throughout red. In the epilogue, involving Ragi and Mana and a tiny mini Mei spinning around, they finally get a full frontal team of just like mages, with the help of Aluru, I believe. Which, of course, Aluru is still associating with Mana, and Mana doesn't particularly enjoy it, but kind of does because he's a tsundere. But anyway. In terms of what Aluru did, she was just chilling with Mana outside the barrier, and, you know, they were bickering as always. Anyway. Nanako-san finally frees herself. She frees herself from being a tree with the help of a bunch of mages. The tree, which is Nanako-san, drops a ginormous grapefruit. And then hatching from that grapefruit is Nanako-san. Congrats, girl, on giving birth to yourself. I don't think anyone else in the series, nor many characters anywhere, could say that. But you achieved the impossible, so good job. You know, unprecedented in magical research. More than that, though, she's very shiny when she comes out. Turns out she's an incarnation, or something very similar to that. The tree she became is actually very similar to the tree that is, or like the structure of the ruins, the Viridian Green, with the moss and everything, right? So, because of that, she's essentially a new incarnation. A religion was already forming around her as soon as she was reborn. And I find that hilarious. This girl just wants a normal life and to do her job and to retire nicely and to not overwork. But she worked under Piffle, 1. 2, she got caught up in the limited events. Then she got caught up in the breakdown events, became a tree, and now she's getting caught up in this. Girl never catches a break. Nanako-san, I feel so bad for you. But it's so funny. Also, at the end of the story, the incarnation system is destroyed. There are no incarnations, which means she is very well, like, the most powerful figure, probably. At least in the magical girl section of the Magical Kingdom, which has a lot of implications. So in the event that we do get a volume 19, I really need to understand what's going on with her, because I think that's hilarious that she just got put into a position of power she clearly, probably, most likely does not want. But yes, very, very funny. I'm glad she has graduated from being a tree and is now um, something much more than that. So you go, girl. Speaking of breakdown characters, we did not see a blink of Clantel. She got mad at Rocky, left, and then left the series. Dang. Girl, you're an SS tier. Where are you, girl? I need you relevant. Please, I need to know. I need more closure for her. That's not depressing. That's not betrayal. That's not sadness. I need her to make up with Rocky. Or some sort of, you know, face-to-face, heart-to-heart conversation. And I'm pretty sure Rocky's still, like, a bit heartbroken, too, by just that interaction. You can tell that he's not the stuck-up legal guy he used to be. He still honors the rules, but he's a lot more lenient, and that's even how Nanako-san was able to be reborn like that. But man, very funny for Nanako-san. And Clantel, come home. Where are you? All right, we're in the big wigs. You know, we're in the final three here. I don't think I'm missing anyone else. Is there anyone else that was relevant and that was mentioned? Besides Deluge at the end, which I will get to. Nope, doesn't look like it. Okay, Frederica. I mean, you heard my rant last time when it comes to all of her planning with Snow White and all of that. She wants to be the Ganondorf to Snow White's Link, if that makes sense. She wants to be the eternal big bad of the Magical Kingdom. She wants to foster magical girls that are pure and righteous and just everything that is her ideal, everything that is like Snow White. And she wants to be defeated for her own twisted desires, and also to, I guess, guide the Magical Kingdom in the right way, because she would technically be in the highest position of power. But, you know, typical pithy Frederica nonsense. We actually get a whole bunch of Frederica in this book, rightfully so. It might even be the most we get of any character. This is her big finale, after all. She has been the single most consistent antagonist throughout all the books. So, you know, that's a very important role to have. So you need a very important, you know, ending to that as well. So, what does she do? Well, she kills a lot of people. You know, as per usual. She upgrades herself. What I really like is her fight scenes, because we get a change in her ability. So, her crystal ball actually becomes 50 crystal balls. You can manipulate them and position them in any coordinate, XYZ, as she wills it. And rather than just like pulling things out from her crystal ball and just viewing people, they act as teleporters. So, if something is thrown into a crystal ball, it pops out another one at her wish. And, you know, makes for quite the terrifying ability, considering her enhanced abilities as a fake incarnation. She even uses this weird martial art involving the hem of her flowy dress and all of her senses. Now, we know that Frederica loves touching and smelling hair. She uses her fetish for touching and smelling hair to realize that she has enhanced senses, and then thoroughly enjoys every sense when it comes to a magical girl, and then uses that with this weird flowy martial art and her crystal balls to fight. What? Excuse me? That's so weird and perfect for her, but also kind of scary. Really, she just acted as the big bad here. You know, she did typical Frederica things. We just saw the culmination of her plans and just her twisted desire. You know, that just what she wanted from all of this meticulous planning was a way to satisfy herself, which is perfect for her because that's what that's what it's like. Now, how does she die? Well, after brutally ripping off Teddy Goodgrip's arms within the ruins, you've got Snow White fighting her. Ripple, outside the ruins, knowing full well that she'll die when she gets in there, throws Kanna's body as a weapon. Therefore, it's a shuriken. Therefore, it's always going to hit its target. Then hops on top of Kanna's body. Kanna's still alive, by the way, at this point. They fly through the ruins, aiming towards Frederica, their target. And at this point, Frederica's basically like swallowed the seed, which is the relic, which will give her control of the incarnation system and everything like that. But Ripple like pierces her throat with like a kunai or her sword or something, and stops Frederica from swallowing it. Snow White, taking the opportunity and taking advantage of Kanna restraining Frederica, grabs the mittens off of Teddy Goodgrip's ripped off arms and crushes Frederica's neck. Now, this is like the 5th time Frederica's neck has been absolutely destroyed by Ripple and Co. But this time it works. Why? Because the seed is in there. The seed, the relic being destroyed, kind of creates like this shining bright light that's just eviscerating everything. Kanna takes the brunt of it to protect, Ripple, Mephis, and Snow White. So she dies. Frederica had it in her throat, so she dies. So it just comes to Mephis, Ripple, and Snow White. And basically we see this image of Snow White reaching out, and she sees that like the moss of the ruins are already assimilating onto Ripple. And she's like, she wanted to save Ripple and to talk to her, but at that point it's already too late. And then it cuts off. And then like the light just like, shines on everyone, and then epilogue. So before we get to all that, Frederica, I'll just wrap it up all nice, neat in a bow. Throughout the series, thoroughly despicable, thoroughly unredeemable, thoroughly weird, but a really pretty design, a really meticulous sense of planning, an absolutely wonderful side story from her perspective in Snow White Racing Project. I'm pretty sure there's grievances that the official English translation put it so late. I've expressed my thoughts that I actually liked that it was so late. Now that's not going to be probably the primary opinion, nor should it be. I'm just weird like that. I think it should be probably read by most general fans, especially anime fans, at the time it is intended to be. But anyway, just everything we know about Frederica and all the things she did, the heinous and just everything. She certainly served her role well. In terms of how I like her as an individual character, even though she was a more prevalent villain than Cranberry and Puck Puck, and probably haunted the narrative. I can't speak anymore. As much as Cranberry, I don't know. I just like the other two a little more. And I think they had more fitting endings. But her last thought, Frederica, her last thought being was, somehow fitting. Because it was basically how she thought when Snow White read her thoughts for the first time in Snow White Racing Project as well. So, yeah, I mean, great job, Asari Endo. For a main villain, you can certainly make him stale, in a lot of ways. Not you saying, I'm saying you are making the main villain stale. Rather, it's very easy to make a main villain stale. But Frederica is not that. She is fresh bread, and kind of weird tasting. What? Anyway, point is, yeah, Frederica is certainly a character that I don't think you could find anywhere else because she's just so her, right? All right, so how are we going to talk about Ripple and Snow White? Their perspectives in this book are mirroring each other. Ripple's always thinking about Snow White, and Snow White is always thinking about Ripple. Ripple is, again, filled with just pure rage and revenge and unbridled animosity towards her situation, towards Snow White's situation, and of course, towards Frederica. It's all she feels. And when it simmers down, Love Lulu, is the one that gets her back into it. And that's what drives her to do the drastic thing that she did. So she's about to get assimilated into the ruins, right? And Snow White's wish is for that not to happen. Snow White, of course, very saddened in her mind. She's very, like, broken. She needs someone she knows she can always fully lean on. And she wants that to be Ripple. After the whole debacle of Frederica, we finally get to their epilogue. Turns out, Ripple's body is toast. It's gone. It's dead. Snow White's body, I did neglect to mention this, but she did become a homunculi under the guidance of Halna and Kana, because she wanted to be able to go into the ruins to stop Frederica. So she shortened her own lifespan, because of course she did, because she's so self-sacrificing. Girl, please. But, yeah. So she became a homunculi, and that's why she was able to be in the ruins. Ripple did not become a homunculi. So through some magic, through the seed and the circumstances and the simulation and whatever, Snow White and Ripple became one. Like, literally, they fused into a new magical girl. Now, before I continue, I realize I have not talked about Halna. She basically degraded into a state of panic, desperately tried to defend herself mentally and physically, and then got killed by Frederica. There we go. And actually, Calcoro, in that sense, who also got beat up by Frederica, survived, and now she's going to be teaching a new magical girl class. Does she like that? Nope. Anyway. See, there was someone I was forgetting. Anyway, Snow White and Ripple, they form into a new magical girl called Snowblood. Now, don't know how I feel about that name. I feel like Bloody Snow could have been better. Snow Red, Red Snow, Crimson Snow, Snow Crimson even. I can understand why it's blood. So much blood has been shed in both of their lives. Ripple has shed a lot of blood herself. But what's funny is that black, right? Black is Ripple, white is Snow White, and then red is both. This trilogy, the titles were just hinting at what the ending was going to be. And that's very cool, I think. Snowblood is a red magical girl. She has the combined abilities of both. She can hear the thoughts of people in need, and any shuriken she throws will always hit her target. So Snow White's in control of the body and all that. All we know is that she is holding Ruler, the weapon, as usual, and has a red dress. I'm going to assume that she has Ripple's scarf, because it only makes sense that she would. I don't know if, like, her white uniform became doused red or what. Well, basically what we need is a Snowblood piece of art. Somehow, some way, please. Volume 19, can you be a thing and give that to us? I would love that. Anyway. And Ripple is chilling in her head. Just the consciousness of Ripple is chilling in Snow White's head. So Snowblood is now always muttering to herself, even when hunting magical girls, which is what she's doing at the end in the epilogue. And, you know, we just have, you can tell that both of them are at peace. Frederica is gone. The past is behind them. Even though there's still a lot to work on for both of them, you know, Um, they're together. They have to be together in the state they're in, and they're just talking and conversing with themselves, and you can just see that they're good friends, and just maybe I don't know, maybe a little more than that. I don't know. I guess it'd be odd to do it if it's the same body, but regardless, they're together. They're finally with the person that they wanted to be with, and all of their bridling emotions have settled a bit. It's not a full good ending for them, but it is an ending, and not everything is going to have a good ending. So it's the conclusion of Snow White's story. She's going to go above Ripple. I think I enjoyed in the end Snow White more just because of her progression as someone who did nothing and had to do everything at the end, just because she didn't want to do nothing anymore. And Ripple was someone who felt like they needed to do everything because they hated doing nothing. So I need to see Snowblood. I don't even need to see like more of their story. Asari Endo said it at the end. Their story is concluded. I'm fine with this ending because Snow White said that she'll keep on dreaming. And it's that same theme at the end of Unmarked. It's a closure to the story. She'll keep on dreaming. She's with Ripple this time. And Ripple agrees. And as Snowblood, they're going to continue dreaming and continue fighting for what they believe in and just continuing to live. And, I got chills, man. Because, we've stuck with these characters since day one. And just seeing them in the state that they are in, they've been through so much. Everything has happened so fast for so many reasons. But they're moving forward, and they're going to keep dreaming. And I don't know. There was more they could have done. Like, if this novel was breakdown length, I think a lot of characters could have benefited more from a more thorough explanation. But even with what we got, I think it's still mostly satisfactory with how Snowblood is. All I ask is that in the future we get art of them, because I just need to see the fusion of their designs. I think that would be really cool. Halna still doesn't have art, by the way. What's up with that? She was such an important character for 3 books, and she doesn't have any art. Asmona doesn't have any art either. A bit of a pet peeve, but I don't know the schedule of the artist Madarino, nor the schedule of the book production. The fact that we even get art for all of these characters when a lot of stories with many characters don't get that opportunity. I'm even grateful for that. But I do want to be a little greedy and ask for Halna and Snowblood and Asmona and like Kafuria's 3 friends, just because I'm picky like that. Please. Teehee. Anyway, yeah, Snowblood. It thoroughly touched my heart. That ending, and it was an interesting. Just like I don't know. It's just, they're gonna keep on dreaming. I'll keep on dreaming about them. I hope that even though it is the conclusion of their story, that Asari Endo wrote that with like a positive footnote in his heart, or in their heart, regarding Snow White, Ripple, Snowblood. And actually, speaking of names, I just recalled the excuse me, the author's note regarding Frederica. Her name, Pithy Frederica. They were wondering, Asari Endo, about the localization of her name. Apparently, in Japanese, it's Pity Frederica, as if, pity me, I'm so sad, pity me. And it was just meant to create this like discrepancy of like, pity Frederica, but she's actually like the big bad villain, or something like that, right? Let me see. Let's see. Okay, so Frederica's appearance in Limited One, Toko says, "You think someone with a name like Pithy would be more pitiful, huh?" Apparently, Asari Endo wrote that after they found out the English word pity. At this point in their mind, their Frederica's name was Pity Frederica. But then Limited came out in English, and Pity was localized as Pithy, and they were surprised as, huh? Why Pithy and not Pity? Apparently, Pithy is the name of a female oracle, which of course suits Frederica really, really well. And then Asari Endo talks about how they ended up liking, the name Pithy as well. So, pithy, pitiful, all that. I don't know, just a really cool name origin for her. Now that I know the more deeper aspect of the pity portion of her name, I think that's pretty neat. Pity Frederica. I'm not gonna pity you, girl. You don't deserve pity. But cool name play there. So that leaves us with one last thing with Deleuze. Now Deleuze did about what was that? Nothing. But in the epilogue, she's with Arlie and with Bluebell. Bluebell has erased Snowblood's memory, as well as the associated people of Arlie and of herself and of Deleuze, because of Shadowgale. Well, not because of Shadowgale, but I guess Shadowgale was with them. Just because they feel like they didn't need to further associate with them. But basically, Lazarine III becomes the new leader of the Lazarine group, the R&D department, blah, blah, blah. And, they're sitting down, they're talking about it. Here we go. So, Arlie had saved Snow White and Mephis from the ruins, but they lost their memories of her and believed that Dory had rescued them all on her own. Crazy. Arlie was apparently disappointed about this, but she had no choice but to suck it up. It wasn't just Arlie. Lazarine had removed their memories of Deleuze, Catherine, Brenda, and Lazarine herself, saving them. That was because they no longer needed it. It was more convenient for Lazarine for them to forget that they ever existed, or something like that. So that is crazy. But Shadowgale is still with them. We know Shadowgale has been mind broken because Lazarine took her memories and is honoring Piffle's wish. Turns out the machine that she was constantly building was a TV. And what happens? What's the very last thing that happens? Well, the TV, provides some static, and wouldn't you know it, a transmission comes through. And it's freaking Fall, still floating in space. My girl Shadowgale knew. She's the GOAT for reaching out to Fall, even in her mind-broken state. So, just listen to this, right? The three magical girls all looked at it at once. The crackling on the monitor jumped and spread and took form as a black and white sphere. I finally managed to transmit to you, Pon. This is Fall. Right now, with an abrupt crackle, the power turned off. What? Crazy! Fall is not dead. My boy is still alive and well. So, Snowblood's gonna have to meet him at some point. Unless, Lazarine takes away the memory of Fall, which would be criminal. I would actually dislike her a little bit for that. But, anyway. It seems like if there is a Volume 19, and it does continue the story even without incarnations excluding Nautical Sun, it's going to have Deleuze as the new protagonist, along with Bluebell. Yeah, along with Bluebell and Arlie. And then plenty of chances for new magical girls, I suppose. But Snow White, Ripple, Snowblood, their story is concluded. But, Deleuze is still fighting. I know she was mad against Old Blue and mad against Frederica. Something tells me that she's still got a lot of bitterness in her. And Dark Cutie was always talking with her about that too, right? Especially in Queens. So it seems like Deleuze might be the forthcoming protagonist, which I am not opposed to. I thoroughly enjoy Deleuze as a character. I think she suits the protagonist role really well. If we get a bit of Snowblood here and there, I think that would also be really cool. But I don't know. I'm pretty satisfied with this conclusion to Snow White's story. I think out of Black, White, and Red, White was my favorite because it made me feel the most crazy. Like, my goodness, what even was that? But Red was also thoroughly enjoyable. I think it did a fairly good job at tying up a lot of loose ends, but also left a lot to explore if the series were to continue. And I hope it does. I don't know. We'll see. But as of now, this is the end of the main content. I'll be exploring the anime, of course, more than I already have, and I'll be reviewing the Musica Magica CD, which I have listened to too many times this year, but I digress. And yeah, this is a series I dearly treasure to my heart. I read the first light novel on a whim because I remember that I watched the anime and I had just like finished like Madoka Magica and I was like, I can do some more Magical Girl stuff, more in the same vein of it. And this has thoroughly became like one of my top series of all time ever. I love practically every character, even the D tier characters. You know, they did provide some enjoyment. Toko, I don't know. Toko, you're struggling. But there are so many wonderful characters in this series, so many wonderful plot threads. The way the abilities are explored are really interesting. The little links between each of the characters in the main stories and the side stories are wonderful. The character design is very colorful and intricate and just varied too. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to love about this series. There's a lot to be curious about. There's a lot to want, even with what we got. Um, but with what we did get, it made me threw me in a roller coaster of emotions in the best way possible. And you know what? I finished it. It took a bit for that final stretch, but you know what? I finished it. I finished it all in this year. So whatever comes next, immediately seems to be the restart anime. I'm looking forward to it. And you know, the hope is, I mean, I don't know what my probably questionable perspective on the series is, but the hope is that more people can experience it, right? That's always the hope because there's a lot more here than, oh man, magical girls killing each other. There's that. Don't get me wrong, there's that. But past the prologue, which is just unmarked, right? There's just so much to see here and so much to experience. And having reached the end now, I can thoroughly say that I don't regret taking this path at all. My heart probably regrets it, but I don't. So, yeah. Final statement here. This tier list is scattered beyond belief. Keeping track of like over 100 characters. Excuse me. You can't just do that. You can't just do that in a meaningful way. What I might do if there's a Magical Girls sorter, I know there's one for Toho, and maybe for like Love Live. I know there's a lot of like sorter websites, right? Or maybe this is one website and different series. But anyway, I might actually do a Magical Girl Racing Project sorter, and just see how different it is compared to my tier list. That might be fun for a video. But in the meantime, for now, this is the end. You can expect some more side content on this series that I will definitely explore. And for the conclusion of Snow White's story, I did in fact read it with a wonderful mix of happy, sad, anger, bewilderment, and everything in between. So, Asari Endo, Madoe no, the editor that I am, it was S. Mura-san, the editor, Yen Press for translating it, and anything else and everyone else involved in any part of this series. Thank you for making it, and I was glad to read it for how it is and for what it was, and for anything that may come in the future. I'll brace myself and pray that fall makes it a little more bearable.